afternoon and welcome to Bermuda's News and Views. I'm your host, Don Burgess, and today we're going to be talking about the Portuguese contributions to the Bermuda community and a little bit about the events on the holiday that's happening on Monday and the celebrations that are happening all weekend long. And our guest today, to my right, Jeff Souza. Jeff is on the steering committee for the holiday. Glad to have you, Jeff.
Good afternoon.
Paul Franco, president of Vasco da Gama Club.
Good afternoon.
And Milton Raposo, who has done a documentary sort of film on the Portuguese in Bermuda that will be premiering later this month. Welcome, Milton.
Thanks, Tom.
So first of all, the holiday celebrates 170 years of the Portuguese coming to Bermuda from Madeira, and this Monday will be a recognition of the Portuguese contributions to the island. And when the holiday was announced, what was your initial reactions?
Well, I certainly was very excited. I mean, as they say, time flies when you're having fun. It's amazing that we've been in Bermuda for 170 years, and the fact that we are now being celebrated this way. So it was a very positive feeling being a Bermudian of Portuguese descent.
Likewise, I was excited but very surprised by it all. Settled in pretty quickly. When the plans were set out and what was expected and what we were trying to do throughout the year. Just settled in and have been in work mode ever since. And before you know it, it'll be done and dusted.
Yeah, same as these two guys. It felt a little bit out of left field at first, but then I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity to show off the community and bring it out, basically.
Yeah. To you, what does it mean personally to have this celebrated?
Well, when we really look at Bermuda, in my humble opinion, 25% of our island is made up of Bermudians of Portuguese descent, or I should say Bermudians that have Portuguese blood running through their veins. And in those 170 years, we've contributed every facet of Bermuda's life, from politics, business. Obviously, we're well known for agriculture, farming, landscaping, cleaning, grocery business, but we've participated in every facet of Bermuda's life and certainly have assisted to make Bermuda the island that it is today. And it's very proud. And as I was telling the gentleman, when I first arrived here this afternoon, we're standing on the shoulders of many great men that worked really hard, and they would be so proud that we are recognized in this way, this fashion.
And many great women as well.
Yeah, and many great women. Thank you, Tom, for that correction. Many great Bermudians of Azorean descent. And when you really think about it, there are just over 250 million people that live in the Azores, but there's 1.5 million people of Azorean descent living around the world. And obviously, the three of us, actually the four of us, are all those people. So it's certainly a very proud moment for all of us.
Yeah, I know nothing other than Bermuda as a home, as my home. I came here when I was one. I've pretty much been here all my life. So this is what I know. But Portuguese has always run through my veins. So I've always felt that Bermuda's my home. I've always felt that I belong. But this is that moment of recognition. It's like, it's really, yes, we have integrated into society, and Bermuda, in my eyes, is a relatively multicultural place. It's not just the Portuguese. There are other people, other nationalities here, but obviously there's a strong Portuguese presence, and to me the holiday is all about how we've integrated into Bermuda, and we can proudly call ourselves Bermudians, but still connect with our roots.
I find it interesting that Portuguese here are such a special segment of the community, in the sense that we don't necessarily put focus on other nationalities here in any other way, but we do with the Portuguese here, and I think it's worth investigating. We don't look at the French or the Italians or whomever else. And I think this is just the continuation of that focus. Why are the Portuguese so special to this country?
Yeah, no, Milton brings up a really good point there. You would hear that in any, whether you were at a school assembly, and I remember, because I went to Ward Academy, and I remember hearing the principal of the school saying, "It's so nice to see so many black Bermudians here, white Bermudians here, and Portuguese Bermudians." I'm like, well, how do you know people are Portuguese? And you get separated, black, white, and Portuguese. But that's something that is truly, uniquely Bermudian. There's no doubt about that. But it is interesting. One thing we must not forget, as I tell my black brothers and sisters all the time, we must forgive, but never, never forget. There was a time in Bermuda, in the early days, yes, that Bermudians of Portuguese descent were not allowed to play on the golf course. They were allowed to cut the grass or caddy. There was a time in Bermuda that, many of the white established families did not want their children to marry a Bermudian of Portuguese descent. So those prejudices did take place. So we can't forget that. And many men and women work real hard to make sure that that those changes have taken place. So again, we must forgive, but never, never forget.
Right. Milton, what made you decide to go ahead and do this film project? It's called Fabric.
Yeah.
And it's debuting a little later this month, sort of a soft launch. So tell us a little bit about your project.
Well, the film, it's a documentary film a la sort of the Ken Burns kind of sort of thing. One of the inspirations was there's a PBS documentary series on the history of New York City. And I watched this thing several years ago, and I thought, it's it goes into so many facets of the city and the immigrants and how the city was built. At the same time, I was already working in film and video, and 10 years ago was when I started this film. And I thought I need to apply the skill set to something instead of just working at a company, so I need to be doing my own little sort of thing. And I had this idea of doing the history of the community, and when I looked for information, there wasn't much information out there. So the Portuguese arrived in 1849, and they kind of disappeared. So the more you dig, the more you just go looking for stuff, and that was one of the inspirations.
Yeah. Do you think, like,
amongst many other inspirations, but
the reason there wasn't so much information about the Portuguese in the early days is because they were just sort of like side roles and not viewed as being very important? They're here for labor, or why do you think that happened?
Possibly, but I think it has to do with the fact that they didn't speak English, and they were in a strange land, and they were just shuffled onto the farms, and they went ahead, and that's what they did. At the same time, they were sort of escaping, the European way of life, which was kind of poverty-stricken. They didn't have those things. So here, they just got on with it, and they just stayed out of sight, really, until maybe when the Azoreans came in the 1860s. And that's when they were more sort of visible. By the 1880s, they were very visible.
What's the most interesting thing that you've learned from doing this project?
The most interesting thing I've learned is the fact, this is just my opinion, I think, like around the turn of the century, 1910, 1920 even, the Azorean farm laborer was attracted here in such large numbers that I believe, and I might be wrong, but I think they were sought after in such large numbers that it equals what the international workers sought after here in modern times. The newspaper reports I was reading, and you can find them online, every other day there's 50 guys arrived on the boat, 60 guys arrived on the boat, 10 guys, like every other day, once a week, there were such large numbers of Azoreans who just showed up, And just the fact that they were in the news tells me that these people were sought after and to prop up the country, you know. And it sort of mirrors, I think, what is happening with the international worker over the last 30 years.
Now, your film sort of has a soft launch at the end of the month. Was this a happy accident that happened? It happened in November when we're celebrating the holiday, or was it something that you planned?
It was a happy accident. It was happy. I would have liked for it to have been ready for the weekend that's coming up, but there's so much happening anyway. So, and I want to have it sort of be my own little event, you know.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening this weekend, Jeff. You're in the steering committee. Paul Vasco is hosting a few of the events. I guess one of the big things for everyone's invited to is the block party on Saturday night.
Yes, from 6 p.m. until midnight. Basically, yeah, we were, when the holiday was announced, a celebrations committee was created, and we met with cabinet secretary, and he pretty much pointed to the different groups, different Portuguese groups, and just kind of had an idea in his mind of which group would be good to do this or that. And we at Vasco, one of the things he asked of us was if we could organize a sporting event, which back in May 25th, if you recall, in commemoration of 170 years, we had a football team from San Miguel play against Bermuda. It was kind of served as a warm-up game, because Bermuda was, after that went on to participate in the Gold Cup. So kind of that was a start, and that was nuts. May 24th, at Vasco, we participated in the parade with a float and dancers and all that, and then the next day, these guys are here at the same time, catering to them, and then the match happened. But I will say that wasn't just us. I mean, when we were asked to do that, I have to give full credit to the BFA, because we didn't know anything about the process of inviting an international team, and there's so much involved. I mean, an invite needs to go out. It had to be sanctioned by the Portuguese Football Association, had to be sanctioned by CONCACAF. It's not just make a call and say we're going to bring a team down, So, really, it's in my eyes, the BFA took the lead on it, and we were more the middleman in terms of communication, the link between Bermuda and the football authorities there.
And the atmosphere at that game was pretty electric.
It was exciting.
Yes.
I mean, the reality is, I've noticed, because I've watched all Bermuda's games for the Nations League and everything afterwards, and you see a lot of Portuguese going out there. It kind of created, Bermuda qualifying for the Gold Cup created this football fever. That kind of that I think brought a lot of the Portuguese out, and then they took note of the national team, some people who maybe didn't. And I just found a lot of Portuguese people that perhaps otherwise wouldn't have gone. I think that match was good for them to see Bermuda, and then we're out supporting in the other games. But anyway, that was kind of how, that was one thing that happened. And then basically after that, and other groups are organizing other things as well, and there have been a few other things go on. And then the next thing we were tasked with, or asked if we could take the lead on, was the block party. And the way we treated it was, it's not a Vasco event. We're just doing our bit. I mean, we simply took the lead in a sense, just reaching out to people, making the arrangements to have the street closed, and then really we just want to turn it into a community event. I mean, it's one block, can hold a significant amount of people. Hopefully, it's a good turnout, and everybody enjoy themselves. But there will be entertainment going on. I mean, we're going to have a Portuguese folklore group. The school is going to do a little something. We have In Motion Dance School, Vision School of Dance, Somerset Brigade Band, Warwick Gombe Troupe. We also reached out to the Chamber of Commerce, to reach out to the vendors that do things at Harbor Nights. So we'll have other things going on, face painting, fun castle, I think Ashley's Lemonade, just sorts of things you're accustomed to seeing. It's almost like Harbor Nights, but on Reed Street. You know, we'll have DJ Scooby, David Vera, who is, you know, Portuguese as well. You know, he'll be up on the porch at the club, you know, as the MC and making announcements, and basically in between, you know, just playing a mixture of music, Portuguese music, you know, any type of music there is, Portuguese, English, reggae, whatever. You know, what we've, you know, the thing is we've integrated into Bermuda society. So at the end of the day, you know, we like the same music that everybody else likes. You know, we're out there. You know, we are a part of Bermuda, and you know, it's a multicultural thing, and I hope to see a little bit of everybody there. It's not, you know, a Portuguese. It's a recognition of the Portuguese. You know, the anniversary of 170 years since the first Portuguese came to Bermuda, but it's something, you know, for everyone. The holiday was not just given for the Portuguese. When it was announced, everybody in Bermuda is going to enjoy a public holiday on Monday. So, I mean, everybody needs to be a part of the festivities. So, we just encourage everyone to come. You know, we'll do our best. I mean, you never know what to expect with these things. I mean, you just put the word out there. You don't know if you can get 1,000 people. You don't know if you can get 5,000 people. But
if you got malasadas, people's going to come out. You're
right. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things that's, you know, it's very hard to get a handle on exactly how it's going to be. But one good thing is that the weather looks good for the weekend. So, you know, at least from that aspect, I mean, it should be good. And it's a lot cooler right now. The timing was pretty good. I mean, it's not cold, but it's not in the heat of summer. So it's a perfect time to be, you know, out in the street celebrating.
I'm glad you shared some of the events and things that were happening, because I think there was maybe some misconception among some people in the community that this is going to be a Portuguese celebration. It's going to be Portuguese, 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 Portuguese all night. But you've invited in, you know, the Somerset Brigade Band, the Warwick Gombies are coming in. So it's a community event celebrating our history, but it's for all of Bermuda.
To me, it's celebrating the integration. The most important thing of it all is it is recognition of the Portuguese, but we are here. To me, it's a celebration of our culture and how we've integrated into Bermuda society, to the point where now you can't argue that Portuguese is somewhat a part of Bermuda's culture now because of the amount of, you know, Portuguese, or people here of Portuguese descent. You know, we play a little part in Bermuda's culture, whichever way you look at it. I mean, a World Cup's not a World Cup without, you know, the crazy Portuguese fans filling up these bars and celebrating in the streets.
Number one fans in Bermuda.
You know.
But there's a lot going on, as Paul was alluding to. There's a lot going on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Actually, on Sunday night, there's a big Portuguese Gala, which takes place at Cedar Bridge, and tickets are available at Cafe Azores and next to the bus stop, and they're $100 each. This is a black tie event, and there's going to be lots of overseas entertainment, and we certainly want to thank some of our sponsors like Fairmont Southampton for assisting with the accommodations, and that's going to be a real spectacular. There's 200 seats available. I believe now we probably have another maybe 50 to 100 seats available still. So we want to encourage particularly Bermudians of Portuguese descent to come out to this, or all Bermudians, as Paul was saying, to come out to this and share with us on this historical occasion of the 170th anniversary. Also on the weekend, while the president of the Azores is here, he would be doing the officiating of the opening of the House of the Azores, which is out at Admiralty House.
And you say House of the Azores, but you've anglicized that a bit. So
yes,
what the proper name is
Casa de Azores, right? Obviously, you know, that's a funny thing when we talk about speaking Portuguese, as Milton touched on, because I'll constantly, because my last name's Souza, people would ask me all the time, Jeff, do you speak Portuguese? And I say, no, I don't. I said, actually, my father didn't speak Portuguese because, you know, back in the day, it was shunned on. Like, for example, my great-grandfather came to Bermuda, and my grandmother was born in 1898, but they would talk in the home in private matters in Portuguese, but talk to the children in English. So the children spoke English. So that's why I must salute, I believe it is Vasco da Gama, has pushed this for many years now, a school to teach Portuguese, because it hasn't been passed on. I wish I knew a second language. Also on the weekend, there's going to be official tree planting that takes place on Sunday as well, and or is that
Monday. It's on
Exactly, Monday. Thank you.
Monday
Have there.
at Botanical Gardens.
Monday at Botanical Gardens, and I believe that's going to be. I was fortunate to be asked on a recommendation for the tree, and that would be a jacaranda tree. Hopefully, Jamaica was able to get hold of one, because the first time that I actually did go to the only cruise I went on my life, I went to Madeira, and when I was coming up in the cruise ship, I could see all the purple flowers of the jacaranda. And many people listening might know the lovely jacaranda tree that flowered next to Westmeath for many years. So that was a sight. And of course, Paul touched on football, and it would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that the greatest football player that ever played comes from Madeira, Ronaldo. So I had to add that little spot. No, there's lots of things taking place, and we do encourage anybody listening in to contact myself or any of the committee members to get tickets to the banquet on Sunday night, or you can get those at Cafe des Azores.
Right. And the culture minister, Levita Fogo, will be there
Yeah,
as well?
she's going to be there as well. It's going to be a nice occasion, and then as Paul said, the street festival, which will be like a Harbor Nights, that's going to be fun.
There's also Sunday night. There's also a reggae concert on Front Street.
That's right. Yeah.
Portuguese reggae artist Richie Campbell, well-renowned, well-respected reggae artist, but just goes to show you how the culture.
There's a lot of things. Actually, it just made me think about something, and one of our members on the committee, Eugene Lima, had brought this to my attention. My cousin George Cadet has organized a golf tournament up at Belmont, and it's sort of the Portuguese against the rest, and that brought back memories of the days, in sports, when, for example, my father was one of the top golfers in the country, and you'd have the guys of Bermudians of Portuguese descent, like George Souza, the great Louis Manas, and David Ferreira, who started Martimart. These guys would go Ocean View and have some serious hooks. And of course, if my mate Kim Swan is listening, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. But those were some serious hooks with some top golfers, back in the day. So it's great that my cousin's doing that, so I want to give him a little shout out for that. But there's lots of things, and of course you see Linda's has been celebrating the history.
I see all the flags up in there.
They're doing specials for the month of November.
Yeah, and of course when you talk about flags, when you have the World Cup taking place in Bermuda, this shows you the strong tie that we have of Bermudians Portuguese descent. There's no flags on cars more than the Portuguese flag during the European Cup and the World Cup.
As long as they're winning.
That's right. We've been doing pretty good lately.
Yeah. And we have President Vasco Cordero coming, of the Azores coming. How big of a deal is that to have him here?
I would say it's huge.
I mean, it's an honor to have the president of the Azores, come to Bermuda. Obviously, we have a significant Azorean Bermudian population here.
We're the 10th Azorean island officially. The Azores is a group of 9 islands. Right. Bermuda is the 10th island of the Azores, as many people say, and it's true.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and he'll be partaking in a lot of the activities over the weekend, the tree planting, I believe with Premier Burt, and then there's obviously the official reception, and taking part in the charity event down in the Admiralty House as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, he's pretty much going to participate in all the important events of the holiday. I mean, they have a pretty detailed schedule mapped out, and they're going to be tired.
and of course, if anybody wants to go to the airport and welcome the president when he comes here, bring their flags and stuff, that would be actually a nice touch if that was to take place.
What time is that happening?
Do you guys know the official time?
I don't know.
No, I don't know offhand.
It's posted on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay. But
private plane? Or is he coming
I'm not sure.
Not sure. Okay.
But he's coming out to us. But I just smiled thinking about when we talk about Portuguese coming here and stuff, and of course now we see that Spanish rock, which we knew all our life, has been renamed Portuguese rock, and I believe that was 1542, was it? And when you really think about it, if those first Portuguese would have stayed here, if they would have liked the fish or something, we'd all be speaking Portuguese today. You know, it's quite interesting, but they chose not to stay here, and of course, we know the history after that.
Jeff, you alluded to a little bit earlier some of the great Portuguese golfers in Bermuda, and maybe Milton, you might know a little bit from doing the film. You know, how have Portuguese influences? Name some of the Portuguese icons, maybe in the different fields that have contributed. I saw a conversation on Facebook last week, and somebody was wondering, where did Portuguese community help in sports? How did they partake? And I was just saying, well, I just rattled off 4 or 5 names just off the top of my head, but obviously there's more. But I mean, it's not just sports or agriculture, business, politics, other cultural events. So, Milton, if you can.
Well, yeah, there's a strong legacy in sports. I discovered in 1920 and in another instance in 1930, there was an all Portuguese cricket side. They were called the National City Cricket Club. They didn't do very well, but they
enjoyed themselves.
I would say just to exist is a feat in itself.
But even that early, which if you
back.
kind of work it out, that was 1920s. They probably were established men. They were probably second or third generation, and they had probably started having friendly relationships with the British up in Dockyard. So that's how they would have learned about cricket, possibly. And I understand there was another team in the 50s, I believe, or 50s or 60s.
Labradors or something.
Yeah, I think
Exactly,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. Anthony Correa was on that team.
My father was on that team
As well, yes, sorry, yes. So, as far as I can tell, there's a strong legacy,
Back in the day, you mentioned, like golf in particular, Louis Moniz, who had a vegetable cart by Shoppers Fair for the older ones listening in along Parliament Street. And Louis Moniz couldn't read or write. I remember my dad represented Bermuda with him, and Louis, everybody tried to beat him. And Louis used to go down mid-ocean and get this lot down there vaxxed by winning all the tournaments. And they brought in top Americans and stuff to try to beat him because they didn't like the fact that a Bermudian or Portuguese set was actually winning these tournaments. But Louis was a master, and then Butch Linder was another great golfer in that time. And of course, in football, there was many guys. Obviously, I have to give my dad a shout out. My dad, I'm very proud to say, is the first Bermudian of Portuguese descent to go in the Bermuda Sports Hall of Fame as an athlete, and my father represented Bermuda in 4 different sports internationally.
Yeah,
but there was some.
And you say first as an athlete because the great Joe Ferreira.
Joe Ferreira was the first Bermudian of Portuguese descent to be inducted into the Hall of Fame as a referee.
And administrator.
And so on. But when I think about some of the trials and tribulations in those early days, I remember when my father became the first Bermudian of Portuguese descent to become a president at Belmont Golf Course. He challenged the owners of the hotel, show me in the Constitution why Portuguese and blacks cannot join this club. And that led to people like David Ferrer, I believe at the time Hubert Smith, to become members of Belmont. And he did this in lots of areas. Even when he first won the FA Cup, and he led BAA on the field to beat Southampton Rangers 3-1. BAA was considered a white elite club in that day. Most of the Bermudians of Portuguese descent played for nationals. So some people shunned on my father that he chose, playing for BAA. And that was an interesting game, 3-1. BAA won over Southampton Rangers. And then my dad was encouraged to go on to be the president of BA, and he would have been the first Bermudian of Portuguese descent to be the president. And of course, I heard an interview that my father did with Dale Butler many years ago that certain people stormed out of the room. And again, it was because a Bermudian of Portuguese descent was in this role. So that's what I'm saying. We have to remember and there's many men and women, as we said earlier, Dawn, that have contributed to where we are today. It's pretty interesting.
In the field of politics, we have I don't want to toot your horn too much,
Right.
but
Yeah,
Trevor Monis.
Yeah, I mean, here, I mean, we've actually had a premier. Craig Canier has Portuguese blood. And then, actually, what I learned the other day, and of course, Milton and I touched on, I think it might have been Paul, Michael Weeks told us that he had a great-grandfather that was Portuguese, which was interesting. And then as Dawn said, of course, Trevor Monis. But we go back in the day, you know, you had Ralph Marshall that had held almost every portfolio in politics. You had Harry Vera, who was quite charismatic. But you've had many Bermudians of Portuguese descent serve in the House of Assembly. And of course, today there's also Zane de Silva, and I believe that's it in the House today. But you know, there's been lots of people over the years, and as I said earlier, we've contributed in every area of society. I mean, we talk about Ralph Marshall. His brother, Zaki Marshall, was my headmaster at Warwick Academy. He was a character. Anybody who went to Warwick Academy would certainly know that. And even when you look at international business, one of the first Bermudians to, I believe he was CFO of ACE, was Chris Marshall, Zaki Marshall, his son, and that was in the early days. So we've been involved in every area of Bermuda.
Right. You say Marshall, and I just want to touch on that because a lot of well-known stories like Bermudians had Portuguese names, and then they changed it to fit in. My family's an example of that. But maybe Milton,
You might want to talk about that a little more, Dawn, because I don't think a lot of people know that.
well, yeah, because my great-grandfather's last name was actually Borges, and changed it to Burgess to fit in and to assimilate a little bit better.
You're coming out for the holiday now. You're coming out during the holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to be a little bit paler than some of my cousins, but there are plenty of Portuguese families that are like that.
Yeah. There are two trains of thought. There were some that intentionally changed their names, and there were some that had their names changed because the person who was recording the name heard it a certain way. So, for example, Abrio is Aubrey. There are people with the last name Wood walking around. It's Madeira.
How did that happen?
Madeira is the translation for wood.
Right.
But Madeira is the Portuguese word for wood.
Yeah. And so
Interesting.
Machado became Marshall. So there's a lot of that going on. It wasn't just the fact that these people intentionally just changed their names. Some of them didn't want to rock the boat. They didn't want to get their work situation jeopardized. So they just stayed quiet. There's like, okay, that's my name now, and that's how they left it. So there's a very strong legacy of that too. You know, because when you move country, you don't change your name. You are who you are, right? Yeah.
Are there any cases of people reverting to the old name that you came across that decided that they wanted to pay,
Homage.
Yeah, me. So I lived in England for about not quite 6 years, almost 6 years, and with my Portuguese passport, that's how I lived there. It said Raposo on it, on my Portuguese passport. My Bermuda passport says Raposa. So one year I came and I got confused about it, because you don't even question these things, right? So one year I came home, maybe Easter or something, I came home and I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, how do you spell your name? And you know what he said to me? He said, how? Here or in the Azores? And it blew my mind. So now I go by the correct spelling, which is Raposo. Yeah.
Did you come across anybody else like that? Or?
I have not yet. No.
It's amazing. I seem to find new people like that. Like you just explained your situation, and I've heard a few of those.
The surprise on your face.
Yeah, I was blown away, and I've had quite a few people tell me that I would have never thought, were Portuguese, but
yeah. It's amazing that different things happen. I mean, it made me think about one thing. people would say, Jeff, do you own Souza Carpets? I said, no, I'm not even related to this lot. That's S-O-U-Z-A, not S-O-U-S-A. I come to find out the other day, they're my cousins. What happened was when Dennis's family moved to Australia, there was a mix-up at like immigration or something, and they put it as S-O-U-Z-A, and they never worried about changing it back. So really, they are Souza, S-O-U, as I always tease people, American Portuguese, USA, S-O-U-S-A. But no, he's my cousin. I mean,
but also shows like people hang on. You know, like my dad. You know, he's like, how do you misspell it here or in the Azores? So you know, there's that hanging on to that injustice, if you know, for lack of a better way of saying it. But people don't forget these things.
Yeah. It's a bit of code switching for the Portuguese community.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to talk about was like last year when Premier Bert announced that it was going to have the holiday. He said, from the original families and those subsequent immigrations, Portuguese culture has become a part of Bermuda's cultural fabric. Again, touching on the title. And that fostering understanding of Bermuda's racial relationships has been part of the Progressive Labour Party's 2017 electoral platform. This government is a government for everyone, and we are determined to forge a society where our differences are celebrated. You know, do you feel like this is bringing people together? I mean, I've seen a little bit of negativity on Facebook and pushback, but in recognition of the Portuguese contribution to Bermuda, and the Portuguese woven into the fabric of Bermuda's society, how do you think this is helping?
I mean, as with anything in life, you're going to have differences of opinion. I think for the most part, the majority of people have embraced the holiday, and you know, this weekend will tell. But I think most people have embraced the holiday, and you know, are looking forward to it. You know, again, the holiday was sort of like to me a recognition, a public recognition, if you want to call it that. I think, you know, for the most part, nothing's really changed in terms of how we've been integrated in society, how we get along with you know, our brothers and the other, you know, the rest of the community. None of that's really changed, in my opinion, in terms of the, you know, day-to-day thing. Right. I think just the public recognition, I think it took everybody by surprise, to be honest. I mean, I wouldn't say it just took the Portuguese by surprise. I mean, it's human nature. Of course, you'll get people that may be of different descent and say, well, if they got a holiday, why don't we get a holiday? Is everybody going to get a holiday? I mean, you know, it's fair comment to make. I just think, you know, because there are a lot of people of Portuguese descent in Bermuda, I think that's the position that was taken in terms of announcing the holiday to recognize. I mean, it doesn't belittle anybody else. It's just, you know, it is what it is. I mean, when 20% argument plus, you know, have that sort of history or, you know, or some sort of Portuguese background. I mean, it is a significant portion of the population. So, I mean, it's one holiday, it's a one-off thing. I mean, it's not a yearly, it's not going to be an annual thing. Sorry to disappoint people, because I'll have people ask, is this going to be every year now? You know what I mean? But
some people just want a holiday regardless.
They just want a holiday, but you know, it is a one-off thing. So it's a one-off shining moment, and I think at some point in time, everybody will have a chance to have their shining moment, and this was ours. You know?
But as you alluded to, Paul, we're talking about a quarter of the population. I mean, so many conversations I've had throughout this country, and somebody would say, well, my grandfather was Portuguese, and you're like almost shocked, like I was with my friend, you know, Michael Week, when he told me that at a Portuguese event, and that happens all the time. So this is significant. I mean, there was, as Dawn did say, that on Facebook there was those that was upset, you know, and why was this portion of the population being singled out in this way? But it just shows the contribution that we have made. it's significant. And I do agree that others have made a contribution, because when you really look at Bermuda, you're looking at three major groups. The largest being Black Bermudians of West Indian African descent, and then you're looking at white Bermudians of English descent, British descent, and then you're looking at white and Black Bermudians of Portuguese descent. And that's what makes up Bermuda, our island. You know, that's what makes up this country, and it's really interesting. But no, I feel people will come together. People will celebrate it in different ways, and there's nothing bad that has come out of it. It's only positive, and you know, we want to continue that by encouraging people to come out and celebrate with us at all the different events that are taking place over the coming weekend.
I think one of the events that we didn't touch on, there's a special mass at St. Teresa's on the weekend with a coffee reception afterwards at MSA.
You make a good point up, because when you look at the first Portuguese coming to Bermuda, that's what actually started the Catholic Church in Bermuda, because the majority of...
I'm going to push back on that, but go on.
Yeah. That's because obviously the majority of Portuguese around the world are Catholic. So we all know about the different processions that have taken place. And I actually participated in a couple of them. It was quite, warming to participate. And for me, I'll be honest with you, because, my family came here 150 years ago, that's quite foreign to me, but I still enjoy it because I know it's of my ancestry. No different than when I went to Santa Barbara in Santa Maria, and I walked past that my great-grandfather would have walked. It was a good feeling, but it was foreign to me. I'm going into a restaurant in the Azores and I'm ordering a coffee, and this guy puts an espresso down in front of me. I'm like, that's not what I ordered. Then I learned real quick that I had to order a cafe americano or a cafe latte, or something, right?
That's like the San Miguel football team. They were down at Grotto Bay, and they had made a request in advance. Said we want to have coffee for breakfast. Gave them coffee. Like, this is not coffee. They wanted espresso.
Real stuff. Yeah. No, so there is we haven't talked about that, but there is going to be a procession through the city, after the church service, and that will be involving lots of the various Portuguese groups in Bermuda.
I thought that was just through Victoria and Donald Street. Is it going to be more than that?
No, that's it. That area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were going to push back on the Catholic Church.
No, it's rude of me to do that, but we shouldn't forget the evangelical church here, because the evangelical church here was actually started by the Portuguese in the 1880s. And I know we tend to sort of put the Azorians in with the Catholic, bucket, which is true. But at some point, those guys they didn't have access to a church. They lived in Southampton, St. George's. They were all over the place. They didn't have transport. They couldn't, so they kind of fell into irreligion, and then along comes the evangelicals, and they kind of worked hard to build up their numbers. And they were started by 11 Portuguese guys, and I believe Mr. Paul Dowdy is a great-grandson of one of those guys. And I'm still waiting on that picture, Paul. And
They've grown a lot there. The church has grown a lot. I've watched it my lifetime.
So we shouldn't, when we think of the Azorians, I would hate to just think, that they're just, all of them are Catholics. They're not, they're also the evangelicals. 7 Day as well, and various other communities.
Oh yeah, today the Bermudians of Portuguese descent would be obviously every religion, but traditionally that has been Catholic, and that is how the Catholic Church started in the country, was and that's why we eventually had a bishop come here in those early days. So it's quite interesting.
There was the evangelicals were so strong with their membership that the Catholics sent a bishop from the U.S. down to sort of bring back some of the flock. It reached a crisis point, I think maybe in 1910 or so, where they said, oh gosh, we need to get these people back.
Well, you told me something I didn't know, so that's good to have the conversation, that people listening and to hear this.
Yeah.
Generally, how's the Portuguese community welcoming to new people from the Azores or from Madeira or one of the other islands? Is there a bit of a cultural difference to deal with?
Sometimes, I would think years ago it was worse. Times have changed. I think everybody's more embracing. I mean, the majority of the Portuguese here, it's no secret, they're from the Azores, mostly from San Miguel. And perhaps going back 30 years ago when I was young, there was a bit of that, but nowadays Portuguese is Portuguese. I mean, Azores is not independent. They're, we support the Portuguese national team. You know what I mean? Right. And we have Portuguese passports. We don't have an Azores passport. You know what I mean? But generally, it's embracing. Portuguese, they're embracing to anybody, but they like to help their own. Like when people, how would I say? Portuguese people are very family orientated. Like you have situations where a Portuguese person would come to Bermuda and get settled here. The original plan for a lot of them was the value of the dollar versus Portuguese currency back then was like, well, I can go to Bermuda, work for 5-6 years, buy a house, then go back home and live with my family. But then their wives are allowed to come, kids are allowed to come. Before you know it, you have all these situations.
I laughed when I went to Azores my first trip. I was up on the hillside somewhere and I saw this big pink house, and of course his name was Bermuda Dollar. And a big smile on my face.
Yeah, but and then what happens is many of them done well here, and then if their bosses or employers would say, do you know anybody else, they would help out friends and family, and a friend or family member in need, and say, look, you want to come to Bermuda for a few years, work, get ahead a bit, and then you can go back and live. So generally, look, when you're an employer and you want to hire an employee, you want to have, you either want a solid background check, or perhaps someone that works for you already can vouch that that's a good worker. So at the end of the day, a lot of people that come here, it's very rare that somebody comes here and doesn't already know somebody who is here. So generally, when new people come in, there's always friends or family here to help them in the settling phase, whether they stay with them for a few months until they get settled. The language barrier is a big deal. You got to get settled.
All right. Well, an hour goes by really quickly.
Does it?
When you're having a good conversation. I just want to give you each a chance to say whatever you want about the holiday or about the Portuguese in Bermuda, or plug your film.
Yeah,
documentary.
poster.
Yeah, I'll give it back to you.
Yeah,
there you go.
Zoom in on that, Dennis. The film is called Fabric. It's screening on November 27th at the Buoy. Tickets are free. They will be on bdatix.bm.
So you definitely need to get a ticket, even
though it's free. You have to just go online, click on it, print it off, and it's going to be epic.
I'm just thankful that the forecast is looking pretty good, and just hopeful that everybody's be supportive, and that all the events that go off this weekend go off well and as planned, and everybody enjoys themselves. And next week and for the months and even years to come, we can be talking about this holiday and remembering, how exciting, how important it was, and how much, it's a part of history. We're creating history in Bermuda. This is something that 30, 40 years down the line, we'll be talking about this. Important to note, it's, as far as I know, it's the first time ever that the Portuguese have been given a holiday in any other country other than their own. So,
yeah, I would encourage everybody to come out to all the events that are taking place this coming weekend. And I do know, because I sit on the 170th celebration committee, that the team has been working very hard. And we have all the events that are taking place, and please do come out. And if anybody wants to get tickets to come to the Portuguese Gala, which is up in Cedar Bridge, 7 p.m. on Sunday, November 3rd, please go to Cafe des Azores and get your tickets, or contact myself and we can assist you. But there's so many events, as Paul said. There's the street festival on Reed Street. There is the tree planting. If you want to come out to the meet the president of Azores, come out to that, and just everybody come together to celebrate. This event that's being put on for Bermudians of Portuguese descent, because everybody has a family member, a co-worker, a friend, that is of Bermudian of Portuguese descent. So I want everybody to come out, have fun, and enjoy the malasadas and the shadish.
And the biscuits.
And the biscuits.
Well, I thank all three of you gentlemen for being here and to talk about this. We did invite the Portuguese Council, Andrea de Souza Manes, to be a part of the panel and discussion today, but she has her own very big event happening very shortly, and so we just wish her congratulations.
Might be on the holiday.
might be on the holiday. That would be very fitting. So wish her the best. I'm your host, Don Burgess, and once again I want to thank Jeff Souza, Paul Franco, Milton Raposo for joining us to talk about the Portuguese holiday. And we filmed this here at the lovely House Bermuda here on Reed Street, next to Vasco da Gama. And as always, wishing you a Bermudaful day.